Hi, I'm Dave Dorson. I'm a senior security specialist at Logicalis. And today we're going to be talking about data clean rooms. If you think of it almost like a locked and monitored meeting room for your data, so what it allows you to do is it allows companies to collaborate. So two companies could walk in with their data sets, do any analysis that they need to, and then walk away with just the results. Crucially, no one ever actually sees each other's raw data. So it's encrypted, it's anonymized, and it's access controlled. A lot of medical teams at the moment are using it for patient data, but obviously those data records very heavily regulated. You've got things like GDPR to consider. If you're looking at things like machine learning or artificial intelligence as well, it allows you to bring in large data sets to anonymize that data, but also use it to give the outcomes that you might need. Third-party cookies, if they're not managed responsibly, they can introduce compliance risks because you've got raw data in there. With a clean room, what you're doing is you're encrypting that data before it actually goes into the clean room itself. So it gives you like security benefits, if you like, because you're not actually moving the raw data around. It reduces the risks of that data being exfiltrated and leaks. Let's take, for example, if you've got a medical system and you've got a bunch of people that log into it to order prescription medication, and you want to see the frequency of how often they're actually repeating those prescriptions. You don't want to see the patient's names, you don't necessarily want to see what the drugs are, but you may want to see the conditions that they're used for. If you're using cookies, what you'd be doing is you'd be tracking that information of that person. Things like their geography, their IP address, their personally identifiable information, and drawing that in to do your analysis. But with a clean room, what you can do is you can take the raw data that you would have anyway from your platforms that are dispensing that medication, and you can anonymize that to remove that risk. That allows you then to work with other pharmacies, for example, to see if there is any patterns or correlations within the sorts of patients that might need more medication or different medication, depending on their conditions. But it also protects the privacy of those users. You've got your walled gardens, and they're things like Meta, Facebook and everything like that, and Google. They can be limited for a lot of people because essentially you're restricted by the usage that they allow you to use, but they are secure. And then you've got neutral third-party clean rooms. Some of the big players in that space are InfoSum and LiveRamp, I believe, is another one. They allow you to work with multiple partners. So if we were talking earlier about medical research. If you look at, say, for example, you've got a number of research laboratories that have got different patients from different studies, they might want to use something like that. And then you've got your cloud-native ones, so things that are hosted on, say, for example, Snowflake, AWS, and, of course, Microsoft are building out their own Azure clean room, which I know is being used quite a lot for medical research. And then you've got your CDPs, so they're your customer data platforms, and you'll see those bolted onto products such as Adobe Suites or Salesforce, and they allow you to look at your customer data, but they have clean room features that are built in. And then finally, really, you've got your custom clean rooms. So your custom clean rooms might be if you've got very specific controls or compliance that you need to adhere to. What we've helped customers do is build, design, and develop their own clean room that's away from their main network. And they can then take those backups, they can take potentially malicious workloads, and they can expose them in that environment and do all of their data forensics. It's also very useful for people that, say, for example, are running SOCs or multiple SOCs. It allows them to collaborate incident information between the SOCs without actually exposing raw logs or raw incident data that might relate to customers. Marketing teams, they love clean rooms because it allows you to match audiences with campaigns. So if you've run a marketing campaign, you can look at the click-throughs that you've had, look at that data without necessarily collecting the raw information. As I mentioned, medical facilities, they might want to use them as a tool to share large patient data sets. Anyone that's building out anything for machine learning or for AI, they might want a single source of truth, but they want that source of truth potentially to come from multiple partners, but also to be anonymized so that they can get the results that they need. They are very valuable in security for things like forensic analysis after an incident's taken place. And then obviously you've got your regulated industries like finance and healthcare. They're really big users of clean rooms because they need to work with potentially sensitive data sets. But they need to keep that anonymous. And then one that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of, but if you're working in manufacturing, say, for example, if you're working with food and you want to work with other ingredient suppliers, or you want to pull analysis on different types of, I'll use yeast as an example because I used to work for a food production company that used yeast, different cultures of yeast and how they might react, but you don't necessarily want the teams that are working on each culture to know the raw data around that because there's intellectual property within that. That will allow them to get the information that each of those teams needs in terms of their queries using a larger data set than what they might just normally have available to them. Data is the lifeblood of organisations, and it needs to be protected, and people don't realise how much data they hold. There's petabytes of data that's created every day. There's over 3 billion emails that are sent on a daily basis. And potentially any one of those emails could be a risk or a data leak. It's really important for companies to classify and understand the data that they hold, but also by doing that, it allows them to understand where they might have a use for a clean room if they need to collaborate using that data that is potentially sensitive. It's irreversible encryption. So I've seen people use analogies such as a cake. If you imagine that your clean room is the cake and the output, the analysis that you want is the cake itself, but what goes into that are the ingredients. Now, once you've created that cake, you can have a slice of cake and it's lovely and that gives you what you want, but you can't then pull out the eggs or the flour or the sugar. There's anonymization of user mapping. So one of the key points of a clean room is that you need that auditing, you need the accountability, because you need to see where people have referenced data, you need to identify users with the queries that they've carried out, but you don't necessarily want to expose who that user is. From an access point of view, obviously everything's locked down, you've got your security, it's logically separated from what you've got or exists on a decentralized cloud platform, but everything's logged. And for security incidents especially, which is where I see them used the most in my role, that audit trail is absolute gold. DMPs, they're really old school cookie analysis tools. We see them used less and less because of the inherent risk with cookies and privacy. And CDPs, customer data platforms, they tend to be used for your own data sets. So they might be your customers within Salesforce and what they've ordered. Clean rooms allow you to almost collaborate those information sets, not necessarily third party, but perhaps partners. In my world, I believe that there is space for CDPs still, and they should be used in collaboration with clean rooms. I guess the best analogy is like it's at the joint operations center. Everyone sees the results, but no one necessarily sees the raw intelligence or the reports around those results. Cookies, I don't believe, you're seeing less use of cookies anyway because of privacy concerns. I don't believe they're as valuable as they once were. They're not plug and play. It's never one size fits all for your customers. You need to have skills potentially around the security elements, around the identity elements, obviously governance. You'll need to allocate an appropriate budget. Matching data sets can be tricky as well. That's something to consider. And security-wise, obviously, you still need to look at the providers and, like you would any other critical service, and make sure that you're very happy with the security that they provide around what they're offering. If you're looking at things like data resilience and you want to ensure that your backups are secure or that they're clean and they've not been tampered with, and you need to bring the company back after a ransomware attack, then a clean room gives you an environment to do that and have confidence in what you've done. And also to demonstrate to legislative bodies for cyber insurance, not only are you geared up if you experience such a ransomware attack, but you're able to recover from that. Financial institutions, especially those bound by things like DORA, clean rooms should be part of their backup strategy. Anyone that provides any sort of public services, they should have clean rooms as part of their strategy. They should be able to not only have confirmation that their backups have taken place, but also the ability to prove that they've tested that process end to end and that they're confident that they're able to restore if they need to. Mostly, we tend to see them on cloud platforms because they need to be scalable. So things like AWS, Google Cloud, Snowflake, and obviously Microsoft Azure. And then you've got your privacy-preserving technologies, your hashing, hashing the data to make sure you can't pull out the raw data afterwards, multi-party computation, so the clever encryption workloads that let you combine the data without actually exposing it and revealing it. The identity resolution that we spoke about earlier as well, so being able to anonymize the users that are entering that clean room, potentially, but link what they need to an output so they can actually pull the information out. And then obviously there's an analytics engine that sits on top of that. And the analytics engine really can be as simple as the SQL database, something that allows you to build out queries and then pull the information that you want from those data sets. I can simplify it, but essentially what you need to do is you need to start with where your data is located and what your security requirements might be around that data. And then also think about the partners that you need to work with, so who you actually want to collaborate with. The idea of a clean room is that it's decentralized. It lives outside of your infrastructure, or if it lives within your infrastructure, it's logically separated with different routes in. And then decide really if you can manage it yourself. Not everyone's got the skills to manage it themselves, so sometimes you might want to work with a partner, such as Logicalis, to build out something that's more appropriate. I think crucially, though, what you really need to do is you need to make sure that your clean room can grow with your requirements. You might have a specific need for that data set today, but as you do more with that, and as you collaborate more with more people, you'll need that to scale and grow, and you'll need to make sure that you've got the features you want. And crucially, you need to make sure that you've got the relevant security posture around that.